What's going on, everyone? My name is Thomas from milezero.racers, and we are super excited to present you today the ClubSport build. The ClubSport build is a 1975 CB750F cafe racer, and we named it the ClubSport for many reasons that we'll get into throughout this little build series spec list video. So stay tuned, roll the intro, and let's get right into this spec list and build series. Before we jump into this video, thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the OGs that have seen this bike from the very beginning to now. Thanks for sticking with me. And to everyone new that is tuning in, you are rock stars. I'm super psyched to meet more of you and answer more questions from everyone and help people build their dream, because that's what I did, and my whole goal is to make it a little easier for the beginners to fulfill what they want. So that's kind of what Mile Zero is. It's a representation of all, because there is a universal truth that lies within, and that is no matter beginner or expert, we all start at that first mile. So my whole idea is to come in as a young builder with my own style and my own flavor and connect a larger ecosystem of like-minded individuals to help build their dream a little easier, using me as a middleman to potentially facilitate a relationship or answer a question or be an inspiration. That's really what it comes down to. It's just psyching the community, psyching myself on what I'm doing, and just having a blast doing it. So with that being said, let's jump into this build review and spec layout of this ClubSport build. I am standing before my very first cafe racer build, and this is something that I had in my mind. I didn't want to build anything other than this bike, specifically the CB750. I love the rich history. I love what they did for motorcycles in the United States and motorcycle industry as a whole. I think the history is part of the reason why I have such an attachment to this chassis and this model and most vintage bikes. To me, they're just sexier. To me, they have just a bit more potential and allow for the builder or person riding to essentially ride their style, ride their flavor. Most of the time, a cafe racer build doesn't mean all these fancy parts and gadgets and whatnot. It really comes down to making the vintage bike as light as possible, as cleared out as possible, like here, and just have that low line from tip to tail. and of course, a loud pipe. I quickly realized that I was up for a challenge. Few things were on the table. I have never built anything in my life. I have never used tools in my life. I started with very few tools in a mix-matched toolbox. And I was trying to accomplish a style that no beginners usually attempt, if that makes sense. But for some odd reason, I had a vision, and that vision was this. So when I first got into this build, I knew that it was going to be an extremely difficult task to bring what I had a vision of to life. But I stuck with it. I was persistent, reluctant to give up, and it happened. I made it happen. So we're going to start by going from the rear to the front. In a macro sense, you can see the wood cowl, silver shocks with a silver wheel, custom plate mount on the side. The rear rim is a 4 1/4 wide by 18 inches. So now moving from the rim up to the cowl, you can see a custom shaped wooden cowl. It is fully solid. You can hear that. It's fully solid. It's hollowed out for a battery underneath, and it is made out of walnut wood, and it is sealed like a surfboard is. So it started by this prototype, which is florist foam that I shaped by hand and essentially mirrored to the wood. Shout out to my buddy Zach Berkeley. Check out his page. If you have any questions about woodworking at all, reach out to him. He's great. So it's super neat. It's solid. It's very protected, and also you can see a lasered etch logo, milezero.racers, in the rear. We also made a little recess for the brake light to sit on the rear cowl rather than the rear frame hoop. I see a lot of people utilize the rear frame hoop as a way to incorporate a LED strip light. However, I thought it would be neat to put it in the wooden cowl. Since this is a CB750F model, I have a stock rear swing arm and the stock rear caliper and disc brake. Moving on to the midsection of the bike, you'll find this custom-made seat and custom-made seat pan. All shout-outs will be linked down below, and a build sheet will also be linked down below. With the midsection of this bike, you can see a custom-made seat from Ginger at New Church Moto. She did an incredible job. You can also see I utilized a Cognito Moto oil reservoir, of which I painted with just clear coat rather than black like everyone else does. The neat thing about this oil can is I took a nice wire wheel, like a Scotch-Brite wire wheel that goes into a drill, gave it a nice design, the way the pattern and the rotation of the disc, and I just took a 2K clear right over it to protect it. It's very rare that you see a Cognito oil tank a different color than just black. Also in the midsection of this bike, you have Cognito Moto rear set brackets and foot pegs. Very high quality, honestly. I guess, the aluminum is the best of the best, just like most brands that custom make their own parts. However, the Cognito ones, I believe, in my opinion, set themselves apart with just their design, their simplicity, their sleek, a great complement to a modern part on a classic bike. And that was one of the goals with this build, was to preserve the vintage rich history and throw a nice flavor of modern parts and style to essentially recreate a modern version of the spectacular Honda CB750 that came out in the 70s. Okay, moving on with the midsection. From the back of the seat to the front of the tank, we're going to call this the midsection. And moving on, we've talked about the rear sets, we've talked about the brackets, the oil can, and the seat. Underneath the seat, you'll find a Moto Gadget M Unit Blue, all rewired with a Moto Gadget RFID. The M lock is under here. So moving on from the Moto Gadget M Unit Blue that's sitting underneath the seat, we can see this beautifully painted blue, vibrant tank. Now this color is very unique, and it's a color that I've only seen on a few motorcycles, of which were usually BMWs. And this color is from a BMW, and it is called Atlantis Blue Metallic. This color is incredible. It's sweet. It's actually one of the BMW individual paint codes. I believe it's 399. So, we have a Atlantis Blue Metallic painted tank with custom laser etched Honda logos to match and tie in the rear cowl. So instead of bringing the blue to the wood, which I think would take away from the beauty of the wood, we brought the wood to the blue through the laser etched Honda badge logos. Under the middle section is the engine, the best part, the heart and soul of this bike. This engine is, to me, the sexiest, beautiful, best sounding engine in the entire world. What lies within the engine is more than a freshly rebuilt motor and a little bit of extra kick. Make a long story short, that story involves me being at the most rock bottom point of this build. And the fact that I overcame this hurdle, the biggest hurdle that the process of building this bike threw at me, I overcame it. And this bike, it just means that much more to me. And especially the engine. I've never rebuilt an engine before. I've never looked inside of an engine before. Well, when I did, the whole camshaft was shredded. So I was scared shitless. What did I do? I reached out to the forums. One person responded. They put me in contact with a CB750 engine legend. That was a little weird. That rhymed too well. His name was Mike Rick. We have a bunch of work done to it. Essentially, the most work you can do to a Honda CB750 motor. We have a fully rebuilt bottom to top engine. So what did we do to the engine? Well, the bottom end was torn apart, all inspected, and all necessary parts were replaced. We refreshed what we needed to refresh on the lower end to make it brand new again. Mike Rick, if you're watching this, I cannot thank you enough. You know my gratitude and appreciation. He helped me go through the bottom end of this bike because I was very intimidated. Absolute rock star of a man. And again, thank you, Mike, for this. Moving on to the top end, you have a whole top end that was sent to CycleX for a second overbore, so turning it from a 736cc to pretty much a true 750cc motor. I have coated pistons, slightly ported head, and I refurbished all the valve train necessary, and it's all dialed in. Along with that, we have freshly rebuilt carbs with K&N pod filters. Also, the carbs were rejetted, pretty dialed in, not perfect, but we will get there for next season. Also, we are running a Dyna S ignition and stock coils. All right, moving on to the final section of this build overview. That is the front end of this bike. So the front forks are off of a 2003 GSX-R 750. I rebuilt the internals on them so they're all fresh, ready to go. You'll find a Cognito Moto triple tree, top and bottom, and conversion stem. Also on the front, you'll find a Motoscope Mini from Moto Gadget wired up and mounted onto the front of the Cognito Top Triple. My handlebars are from Jack's Garage. At first, I was running Amazon clip-ons and then quickly realized how crappy they are. So I picked up some clip-ons from Jack's Garage. Unbelievable quality, unbelievable products. Definitely check Jack's Garage out for all conversion kit products, plus much more. You'll find also Jack's Garage aluminum handlebar grips, bar end blinkers from Moto Gadget. You'll find purpose-built Moto handlebar switches, and I repurposed a 2003 GSX-R stock master cylinder to save some coin. And then, you have an LSL front headlight and stainless front brake lines going down to refurbished Tokiko GSX-R front calipers and rotors. Aside from that, everything is painted, and on the front wheel, you'll find a 2.75 by 18-inch rim and a custom front hub from Cognito Moto. The most important aspect that I left out from the midsection of this build is the underbelly. The underbelly is from AirTech. However, I am in the process of designing and developing my own, of which should be ready by December for prototyping. The last piece to this bike that I did not mention was the MotoGP Works 4-in-1 exhaust that I absolutely love. This thing is an absolute beast. It sounds incredible, and honestly, I think it's one of the cleanest and sleekest and best sounding exhausts on the CB750. So that should conclude this video. I believe we covered everything in terms of specs and build overview on this bike. We can get into story time in another episode because I'll tell you what, there were an extreme amount of lessons learned in the process of building this bike and a ton of stories that come along with it. Maybe we'll hop on here and do that for another build overview episode. But in this video, that should conclude things. I hope you enjoyed. This is my inspiration. What's yours? I can't wait to see it. Remember, reach out to me with any questions at all. We love collaboration. I love talking and meeting all of you. At Mile Zero, we are one team and one family and one ecosystem of like-minded people that just love to rip, ride, and build motorcycles. It really doesn't have to be motorcycles. It really just comes down to if you envision something and you believe you want it, or if you want it, you gotta go get it. And don't stop until you're done. Next on the chopping block, you'll find a 1974 CB450 right here. And also I have a 1990 K100 LT that I will be building as well. So this is not the only bike that you will see built by Milezero Racers. You have two more in the making. Yeah, we're gonna go from there and see how it is. We love bringing style to things, and right now it's a motorcycle, and I love bringing my style to the motorcycles and custom builds and sharing it with all of you. Honestly, the whole journey is we're in it together. We're here as one team, one family, and that's it. If you really want something, just build it. That's really what it comes down to. And then ride it, because at Milezero Racers, we dream, build, ride, repeat. Say it again: dream, build, ride, repeat. Bam. Dream, build, ride, repeat. Milezero Racers. We're gonna end this video. Thanks for tuning in, checking out the build overview and the spec list of this build. We're super psyched. Again, it is named the ClubSport Honda CB750 build by Milezero Racers. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.